And welcome to the September 21st meeting of the Research Triangle PowerShell user group. We're happy to have you. This month, we're happy to have our one of our leaders here, Mike Kanakos, present on secrets management. How you doing there, Mike?
I'm doing okay. Let's see how this demo goes, though.
Yeah, I think you'll be fine. I think you've done
lower
this
the
before.
bar. You lower the bar, and then people leave like they got a bonus.
There you go.
That's what you do.
So what is secrets?
So we're going to be talking about secret management tonight, and I have some stuff in the first beginning of the talk about some stuff that was in the news. But essentially, it's managing credentials or information that is important that you don't want to be easily found. You need to secure it you need to save it in a secure way. That usually means encryption, but also through the use of this secret management module, you have access to the secrets, the bits of information you want that you can recall on the fly and pass it to your code and use it for however you want. And so for me, that usually means credentials for authentication, but it could be authentication strings, it could be GUIDs, it could be a tenant ID, a subscription ID, it could be information about different environments that you have. Really anything that you want to save, you could put in the secret management for recalling later, but keeping it encrypted at rest.
Cool. All right.
And so let's get started here. All right. I got to start sharing. And so usually I get made fun of because I like to make a lot of slides. And so tonight we have no slides, but I couldn't pass up the opportunity to have something. So I got one markdown note of a little bit of an overview of what we're going to talk tonight. So we got just a little intro here. We're going to talk about some current events in the news related to secret management, and then we'll jump into using the secret management module. And so what are we going to be talking about tonight? As I mentioned, current news. There was an Uber hack that was recently in the news. Happens to be very pertinent to what we're talking about tonight, so I wanted to talk about that real quick. I always like to do, right in the beginning of the demo, a quick usage demo right off the bat so people don't have to wait an hour to see how something gets used in real life, so we'll do that. I have a couple of questions I get asked at every secret management demo I've did, so I'm going to address those right up the front, and then we'll start talking about the architecture of the modules, and the rest will be all code. Will be all how do you use it, how do you install it, how do you configure it, how do you make secret, recall a secret, how do you use different vaults, lots of different things. And so we're going to cover all those things. I'm going to be focusing on two modules tonight. One's called the Secret Store, which is the local repository from Microsoft, and Azure Key Vault, which is a key vault in the cloud from Microsoft. And I'll explain a little bit more about those in a second. And so the first thing I really want to drive home to everybody is why you need to consider secret management. And so with that, let's talk a little bit about what happened recently in the news. This is some text I pulled off of Twitter. And so what happened, if you're not aware, Uber, and we're not here to shame them, we're just talking about what happened. Uber was, their network was infiltrated through social engineering, which is basically a buzzword for they got phished, right? So someone got phished, an attacker gained access to the VPN, got on the network, was able to scan the network, found a PowerShell script, hard-coded credentials that had the admin credentials for their password vault, and that was able to get them everything else that they wanted. And so if we just jump over here, there's one, there's one more. And so this is supposedly the text of some person who was saying that he did it, and so what he basically found we got in there was an internal network share. Whoops, sorry about that. Internal network share of PowerShell scripts. As I mentioned, username and password for an admin user in their secret vault. And then once they got access to the secret vault, they had domain admin, credentials for AWS, G Suite, everything that the company thinks is important. And so how did they get that? some admin or somebody created a script, put it on a network share, and for whatever reason left credentials in the script, whether they did it out of ignorance or temporary testing or whatever. And so, there's a whole range of bad practices in this scenario here. And so we want to show tonight how we can sort of secure our credentials in a vault and recall them on demand so that you don't have to put any secrets, any important credentials into a script and not end up like this. But there's a couple other pieces here that I'm not going to talk about tonight, but that are like super important. And so this is my sort of like wake up call to people on the call. First of all, if you're putting scripts in a network share, you got to get away from that, right? And if they're in the network share, they got to be clean, right? Use a Git repository. Teach your team members how to use Git. That's the way to keep your code safe and secure. Now, is Git more secure than a network share? Not necessarily, but it's a tool built for sharing and keeping track of changes of code, not a network share. So I would highly recommend that any team that's using a network share to share their code, unless it's for a specific reason and you're very aware of what that reason is and the usage, I would frown upon that highly. And so the other thing that I'll mention here in this particular hack that doesn't really jump out is, and we're not going to talk about it tonight, but this attack probably would have been stopped with two-factor authentication. And so just because they got a username and password, two-factor to the vault probably would have stopped them. So in particular with cloud vaults, two-factor authentication is pretty much a necessity. I'll show you a little bit about that tonight. We're not going to talk about two-factor, but I'm going to log in with Service Principal tonight, so I don't have to deal with the two-factor authentication, but I can show you as well. And so those are just some tips I want to kind of share with people to remind them. No passwords in scripts, no scripts on the network, and two-factor whenever you can. Those have become like the basics of what we do now. And so you see, when you don't use those things, bad things can happen. I am pretty sure whoever this person was that got phished and they discovered this, they had the right intentions, but it seems like every year we hear about 2 or 3 of these use cases that happen through the same thing. They got some credentials and they found a wealth of information in the network. So I would just use this as a reminder to maybe think about what you're doing at work and is it the best practice, and maybe take an opportunity to review that.
Can I ask a quick question about that?
Sure.
How often, is it well known that that's an industry best practice to not leave credentials in a script, or is this something that people are just learning it for the first time, with knowing that this tends to come up a few times a year?
Maybe repeat the question.
She wants to know how well known is it that you shouldn't put credentials in a script.
So I just want to add a point to that.
Yeah.
On Microsoft's documentation, they literally have a post-it note on the documentation for secure string. They never want you to put your credentials in the script, because even if you keep it somewhere safe where people can't see it, the creds can actually show up in logs sometimes. So
so you're all right. And so just to sum up kind of what you were asking, so it's a PowerShell group, right? This is not a C++ group where probably the core members of that are people that have a computer science background and have more of an education about programming. This is, very honestly, desktop admins, sysadmins, right? But it's also cloud admins, all kinds of people. And you get people of all levels of knowledge here. And so it's very easy to start out with PowerShell and not really know what you're doing and put a password in a script because you couldn't figure out another way. We all have made those mistakes. That's part of the learning process. But now with everything being connected and the cloud being more prevalent, those mistakes hurt more when they're found. And so that's kind of the reason to do a talk like this, is to show people there is a way to not make those mistakes. But you know what? A lot of people do that. I mean, I think probably everybody here has used a password in a script at something for some point at some time, right?
Well, I think it's really a matter of, security versus convenience.
Yeah.
And so, in doing this, and you kind of see, well, eventually we'll get to the point where Mike's going to walk through this. Well, there's scaffolding that has to happen for a lot of this stuff. In order to increase the security at this and make those things, you need to put all that scaffolding together. And part of don't want to say it's a problem, but that scaffolding can be made in different ways. Hey, you can do these different vaults, you can do other stuff. To your point over there, the question was, hey, Microsoft says, you're using secure string, so you need to get credential, you need to lock down those credentials or that password in a different way. Well, there are different ways to do that as well. You could use the local cred manager and then, do an encryption there. And then how far does it go? And so a lot of that, and then there are other ways in order to secure an identity at that point, or, an identity to then, secure other things. But the thing is that it can be done ways. And so the easy way, or, hey, somebody's just grabbing some random script, or, hey, some process online. Well, hey, here's where you put the username and password. Well, you just need to know more to say, don't just put it in free text. And so, and even to some of the other things is like, because it's been around for so long, it just inherently can just be that way. And so you could just as easily put full creds right there. And so it may not be designed, hey, it was there to put, but it was an expectation that somebody was going to type it manually. And so it would be free text. So if you're then, I'm going to automate this, but there's now a value where I can type it. Well, okay, then you just have to understand where the caveats can be.
And I would just say that the onus is on us as users, right? If you're given the privilege to have a high level of access in the company, or you have access to passwords like domain administrator accounts, or to high level access to some database, or to log into Azure Cloud as some advanced user, forget about scripts. It's just part of our responsibility. We need to secure that information, right? And so if you have a child, you don't give the child your wallet and your keys and let them run around the house because they don't know what it is, right? And so we just have to be smart with the tools that we're given to use. And so the whole point of this is to educate people to learn how to do better, right? And not to pick on people who've done wrong, because I've made probably every mistake that I could talk about. So that's my thing on that. Let me show you guys how Secret Management works. It's really simple, and it's actually very boring. We're going to talk mostly about configuration, because logging in with a secret is no different than how you log in scripts with anything else that you do. So let me get started here. I don't need that. Let me make sure this stuff is cleared out. Oh, Jesus. How do you do F8 when you're presenting? All right, I'll figure that out. Yeah. Oh, and wants a password. Look at that. Wants password. Perfect. Okay. All right. All right. So what are we talking about when we say credential management, right? And so my focus is in identity management. I'm an AD and Azure AD engineer. And so that's when I do my demos, they're usually focused with some demos around Active Directory or Azure Active Directory. So in this case, I'm going to talk about an account called MK Test User 101. And we want to get some information about that account. And so I've just created some variables here. And so I'm going to go and get some information. And I got to remember the function key now. I didn't think about that. Okay, and so we want to see what we got here. And so, what was that? I have a feeling Teams is going to make my demo work a little weird now. Okay, so this is our user account, right? The person has a name, MK Test User 01, doesn't have a department in the title. And so now I want to change their department in their title. I want to edit this person's information. And so if I want to do that today, it's very simple. It's a command called set AD user, right? And if I try to do that right now, it's going to say I don't have rights, because the account I'm running on my machine here, this account right here, M. Kanakos, is just a standard user. It's no different than any other person in the company. And so I have rights to read from Active Directory, but I don't have rights to make changes in Active Directory. And so for me to be able to make that change, I need to do it as a different user. And so there's a lot of ways that people do that. Maybe you have one console open as your standard user and you have another console open as your admin user account or something like that. Another opportunity in these commandlets is to just leverage a parameter called credential. And so if I do this, and I'm just going to bring it up here for a second, this credential parameter is an opportunity for me to put in alternate credentials to authenticate with, so I can then get the rights to do what I want. And so that is the crux of what we're trying to do here. What I want to do is I want to be able to authenticate it as another user. When I put the credentials in, it's going to say, what's your password? Well, for those of us who write scripts, we don't really want to have to interactively type passwords all the time. We want to be able to pass in our credentials securely to the command so that we don't have to keep typing passwords, especially like in my organization, our admin accounts are 25 character passwords with complexity. I don't want to type that every time. And so if I can find a way to pass that information into the script or into the commandlet and do it in a secure way, that helps me. And so that's what the secret management module does. It stores your information, and then when you want it, you can recall it and pass it to credentials. And so a simple example here is this commandlet on line 38 here. This is saying set AD user, ID is just its name up here. We're going to change the department, change the title, and we're going to use a credential. And so this is where secret manager comes in. I'm passing in a command called get secret. And I'm going to explain this all in detail, just doing a quick demo here. And I'm going to say get secret, and the secret that I want to get is a name that I made up called cred mk admin. That's just a friendly name for the secret I made. You can call it anything you want. It just happens to mean, for me, it's a credential and it's my admin account. It's just easy for me to remember. And so when I do that, what you didn't see here, because it just happened, is I didn't get the red insufficient access error anymore. And so now if I go back and I query that information, we've set a department name, a department and a title name. And so that's credential management. All I did was authenticate and pass a credential to a commandlet so that the commandlet can run as a different user that allows me to do the work. And so when I say that I want to talk about secret management and credential manager, that's it. It's that boring. It's just a credential parameter and you pass it in. All the configuration and usage and how to set it up is what we're going to talk about tonight.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
Would you do me a favor and turn on the screencast mode on your VS Code?
Do you remember the console, the command for that? I don't remember what it is.
I just do F1 to bring up the command palette and then do toggle.
Which one is it?
Screencast mode.
Okay, and what the hell does that do? I don't remember.
Right, so go back to 40, and you were pressing F8 to launch it, right?
I got you. Okay, yeah.
And when you click places, it'll put a little red circle and whatever.
Okay, all right. Good to know. Thank you, sir. All right, so that is a quick and dirty demo of what you can do with secret management. So now let's talk about like how the hell do you set this all up and how does it all work? And so for that, I want to do a little audience participation. All right, and so what I'm looking for is, so let me talk about the two questions I get for secret management at every talk, and just to get them out of the way. Everybody wants to know, can I use this with my automation, schedule tests, schedule jobs, my automation tool, whatever it is? That's what I want to do with it. And the answer is no, you can't. Well, you can, but not easily, because it's designed to be an interactive tool. And so for those of you that have 1Password or LastPass or any of those tools, you're familiar with the concept of a master password, right? And so there's a master password on the vaults for secret management as well. And so when you don't interact with the vault for 15 or 20 minutes, it'll time out and it'll ask you to put the master password in. Well, that master password kind of doesn't work well with that script that you need to run every 4 hours and is not there for someone to type in. And so this isn't your best way to do it. You can take that master password off of a vault but now you've just taken the password off the vault. And so it is encrypted and it's not in a common spot on your machine. So is it safe? Yeah, it probably is. But a lot of these things come down to how well you know your environment and where you're putting things. And so Jeremy, who's not on the call tonight and will be speaking next week, will tell me, oh yeah, on my box that I control that only I have access to, I set up a vault and I took the password off and my automation can just read from the vault. But I'm the only one that has access to the box. That's a little different than if it's a box that 35 people are logging into, right? And so these choices are not always black and white. Like, should I do this or should I not do this? And so the answer that I say is this right for scheduled tasks and jobs and automation? It's probably not. Because there's third-party tools that handle the part of passing in stuff better. Now, here's a giant caveat. You know what is really good for that? Azure Key Vault. And this connects to Azure Key Vault, which is the next question. Does this work with Azure Key Vault? I got that every demo I did. Does it work with Azure Key Vault? Yes, it works with Azure Key Vault. You have to jump through some hoops to do that, and we're going to go through that tonight. Because Azure Key Vault is in the cloud, and you got to authenticate to the cloud, and you got to have permissions to a place in the cloud, and you got to delegate permissions to the account, and all that stuff. And so there's a couple of extra steps you have to do with Azure Key Vault that you don't need to do with a local Key Vault, and I'm going to explain that now. And so I want to go over the architecture a little bit, and then I promise you we'll just do code the rest of the time. But to do the architecture explainer, to make it make sense, I want to ask 3 volunteers, and I'm going to just pick Lars, Phil, and Steve here. And I'm going to ask you guys a question. It's very simple. And so I want you guys to think like you're designing a module, okay? You're designing a module that's going to work with Secret Manager. You're creating a module to manage a vault, okay? And so first, let me just do this. Let me pull this up here and drop this in here. And let's take a look at, these are the vaults that exist today, okay? And so the first 2 vaults here are Microsoft vaults. And those are designed and supported by Microsoft. Everything else on the list is what we would call open source. And so I wanted to run it a different way, but I'll show you the authors later. Some of these vaults, like Devolutions, is made by a company, whereas KeyPass is made by Justin Grody, a community member. They're all open source. These are all takes on the secret management module that someone or some company developed to work with secret management. And there's a caveat there, because all these vaults existed prior to secret management. And so when these people had to make their modules, they had to make secret management connect to an existing tool with whatever tool the vendor gave them to connect to. And so, for example, the LastPass vault, I would love to use that. But to use the LastPass vault, you have to have the LastPass CLI on your machine. And that only runs on Linux, and I don't use Linux, so I can't use the vault. And that's not a problem of the vault. It's just that the vault has no other mechanism to talk. The PowerShell vault has no other mechanism to talk to the LastPass vault other than Linux CLI. So every one of these modules has been made with someone having to make design decisions. And so now we're going to ask you guys to make design decisions. I want each of you to pick one of the modules on the screen that's open source. All right. And I'm going to ask you 2 questions. I want you to come up with the name of a commandlet to create a secret and to view a secret. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to highlight a point that should hopefully come out when we get the answers. And so I want you to think about regular approved verbs for PowerShell and things like that. And so I'll start with Steve. Did you pick a vault off the list? You want to see the list again? Sure. Take it. This is not like anything important. It's just trying to drive home. Okay. So CyberArk. So what I want you to think about is a commandlet that you would name for creating a secret and getting a secret from CyberArk. And so you have to think of that name. And so I'll ask the same thing of you 2. Do you have a vault you picked out?
KeyPass.
Okay. And what did you pick out, Phil?
Collapse.
Okay. So let's start with you. What did you come up with for commandlet names?
Set secret KeyPass and get secret KeyPass.
Okay. Not bad. Secret KeyPass. Okay. And get. Okay. Phil, what did you come up with?
Well, I did new secret and then get secret.
Perfect. You are only making my point more you're driving home my point. And Stevie, what did you come up with?
I was gonna do new CyberArk key pass.
Okay.
New CyberArk secret, get CyberArk secret.
Okay. And so
Yeah.
we don't need to remember these commandlets. It's not important. When I talk about the architecture now, this will make sense. And so the reason that I asked you guys to do that exercise, what happened in my picture, is because this is how the secret management architecture works. And so we live up here, we type in this console, and we pass our commandlets down to the secret management module. Secret management module interacts with vaults that you create on your machine. Those vaults have modules, and the modules interact with the storage location that you want to store your secret in. And so the reason I did that exercise was because Microsoft made a design decision that nobody realizes when they start with secret management that's super important. And so the design decision was, if they let people create vaults to work with secret management, and they asked each one of you guys to come up with commandlets for the vaults, you all would come up with different commandlet names. And so who the hell wants to remember 52 commandlets to type to create a new vault, a new secret, right? And who wants to remember all those commandlet names to recall a secret? It would be different for every vault. And so Microsoft did away with the ability for you to do that. And that's the design decision that you need to understand. And so when you work with the secret management module, you interact up here. And the secret management module talks to the vaults that you install on your machine. Okay? And so if you want to use secret management, you need to install 2 vaults at a minimum. You need to install the secret management module, and you need to install a module for the vault that you want to store them in. And so I'm going to be talking tonight about the secret store and the Azure Key Vault. And the reason I'm talking about them is because that's what everybody asks me about. But honestly, any of the vaults work the same exact way. It's just where the data is stored. All right. And that's the beauty of the secret management module. This is what I'm trying to drive home. Once you get your vault installed, you are only going to use, most likely, the commandlets that are in the secret management module. The secret management module talks to the module for the vault and figures out how to communicate with the vault. You don't need to know about encryption levels. You don't need to know what commandlet is needed to recall a secret from that vault. You don't know how the conversation goes back and forth. You just say, give me a secret from this vault, and secret management does the work for you. So what that means is we don't get what just happened with the 3 individuals that were in the exercise. You want to set a secret, it's set secret. You want to get a secret, it's get secret. The only thing that changes is a parameter called vault name. You pick the vault you want to put it in, and secret management figures out how to talk to that vault. And because of that design decision, it makes the module so much easier to do. Because after you get your vault set up, your day-to-day activities is usually 3 commandlets: pulling a list of secrets, pulling an individual secret, making a new secret, and maybe overriding a secret. I've been using the module for about 1.5 years, and that is, those 4 commandlets I just told you is probably 95% of the stuff I do on a month-to-month basis. The only time I interact with the vaults is when I need to unlock a vault, put in the master password, or when my password at work rotates and I need to update the secret that's in the vault. Other than that, I just use get secret and set secret. And so once you understand that concept, it doesn't matter if we're talking about the secret store, LastPass, KeyPass, they're all the same. It's just a destination. The hardest part that you have to understand is how to register the vault so that secret manager can talk to it. And so because each one of those products is different, there's a different set of hoops that you have to jump through to register those vaults. And so the process for secret store is not the same as Azure Key Vault or KeyPass or LastPass or Pleasant Server or any of the others. So the best advice I can give you is when you want to see how to set up the vault, you go to whoever created the vault module, to their documentation, and they will lay it out. I'll show you how you register vaults for Secret Store and for Azure Key Vault It's not very challenging. Azure Key Vault can be a little hard, but Secret Store is really easy. And so I'll just take a quick pause here. Anybody have any questions about what I've talked about so far?
So you talked about, Mike, you talked about.
Unmute yourself, or
Oh, I'm unmuted right there. You talked about like a timeout for the vault. So I noticed that you're running in screencast mode, and it looks like some keystrokes were revealed. So if you have to re-authenticate to the vault, will that show your password as you're typing it?
No.
Okay.
No. And so actually you brought up a point that Matt was making earlier about secure strings. I'm going to show you in a little bit that secure strings are not secure. And so you shouldn't count on secure strings, because if secure strings were secure, we wouldn't need the secret manager module. Secure strings are just obfuscated text that is easily reversible. And so we have to remember that. When you put text into a string and it's a secure string, it's really just hidden from you. All right, and so we'll show that in a second. But when you put the master password in, it's asking you to do a secure input, so it'll put stars in as you're typing. If you interact with the vault enough during the day, and you set the value high enough, you could never have to re-input your master password.
86,400.
Yeah, I mean, mine's set for 15 minutes, and not too often do I have to put it in. All right, so there's a whole range of modules out there that you could use. Here's that list again. They're all great modules. Everybody has favorites. My personal favorite is the Secret Store, which is local on my machine, and Azure Key Vault. And so that's why I'm sort of talking about them tonight. But you should be able to do anything that I'm talking about tonight with any of the modules. That's the whole point of the configuration. The vault is sort of obscured from you. You just need to authenticate and be able to talk to it. And so with that being said, let's get on to actually doing some stuff. So what do I want to talk about next? All right. So I have modules installed already. I'm not going to reinstall them, because installing modules for secret management is no different than any other PowerShell module install. And so it's just install module. The only tricky part is the names are a little long. They all start with Microsoft.PowerShell secret management, Microsoft.PowerShell, that's Secret Store. The AZ Key Vault module I have installed also, az.key vault, and I install on the modules with all user scope, just to make it easy. Find module is your friend. There's a tag that is put on all the vaults for secret management. And so when you search on find module, you can use the tag secret management like I was, and that's how you will get this list of modules here. You can also use the PowerShell gallery. And if you go to the PowerShell gallery, there will be links to a person's repo and where to get more documentation. And so that's the best way. Go to the person's documentation to figure out how to install the vaults. It's usually 2 or 3 commandlets. Yeah.
And I'm sorry. So are these scripts right here unanimous? Like this is, you always have to go back and use these if you do want to.
So these are not scripts. These are modules. And so modules are a collection of scripts.
Okay.
So these are all packages that contain multiple scripts within each one of them.
I gotcha.
And so these are modules that have published to a public gallery called the PowerShell gallery.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are tools that somebody built. Let's say Phil, for example, built a module and wants to share it with the community for anybody to use.
Gotcha.
And so if you are looking for a way to store your secrets in LastPass, but from the command line,
mm-hmm.
you would use the LastPass module to make a connection between your command line and the vault that you have out in the cloud somewhere.
Gotcha. So going back to kind of what you touched on, because it was really interesting in the beginning with the phishing hack at Uber.
Huh?
So what if they were to like phish into like mine or your computer and then get what you usually put in for your command scripts? Could they get in your vault that way, or does it use the?
So there's always a way into a mousetrap, right? There's always a way. But so the way this module works is this is interactive. So
Yeah.
Someone either have to take over my desktop, or they'd have to be running as someone behind the scenes, interacting with the profile. But I'm guessing that someone has to work within 15 minutes of me unlocking my vault, because it's going to lock again.
It's going to do the time
Right?
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're going to have to authenticate. And if they don't know the vault password, then they can't get any of the secrets.
Gotcha.
And so it just happens to be in that Uber hack that someone put in the admin credentials for the vault in a public place. And so they just needed one set of credentials and then they got to everything else. And so it's like your child who, you know, you put a bunch of candy in the closet in the bedroom and you're like, I'll just lock the bedroom door and that's it. And they get through the bedroom door and they can get into the closet because that was unlocked, right? And so there's always going to be a way to get in, right? And so what all these solutions are about is building enough security against enough usability so that's not a super pain in the ass for you to do your work all day long, right? And in the cloud instances, that works a little bit different. So what I'm working on is Secret Store. That vault exists only on this laptop. And so if this laptop dies, my secrets are gone. But that's no big deal. In the cloud, they're accessible to anybody that has rights or permissions to see them. So there's more layers of security on a cloud vault than there is on my local vault. And so I was talking about two-factor authentication. Generally speaking, I know you guys are not PowerShell people, but when you interact with the cloud and it's you interacting with the cloud, you should be going through two-factor authentication. So I log in and it goes, hey, we want to verify who you are. You have to pick up your phone, put in a code, and then say, okay. But for when we write programs and applications, there's something called a service principal. And you can run as a service principal, and that application can connect to the cloud and not have to deal with the two-factor authentication. And you're assuming that the service principal is privileged information. One or two people have it. It's a super long string of characters. You can lock it down in a number of different ways. So there is no perfect system, but you'll see when you go through this, certain systems are harder than others. Yeah. Any other questions? Anybody online? All right, I think you guys probably want to actually see how this stuff works. So let's do that. All right, so I was talking about install and config, install module. For the modules you want, you need to find them, find module, okay? Installing the modules is simply just install module. After you get the modules installed, the first thing you want to do is probably create a vault. And so before we do that, let's take a look at the commandlets that are available for the two modules. And so I breezed through this earlier. Secret management module is the one that you're going to interact with mostly. Secret Store is Microsoft's version of a local vault. There are some commandlets there that you'll use. Now let's take a look and see what we got. And so the commandlets available for the secret management module are these commandlets here. And so I use, oh, I forgot the command already, but I'll just wing it. I use this commandlet a lot. I use this commandlet a lot. And I use, let's see, get and set, and never remove a secret, register a secret vault. And that is really the bulk of the work that I do with secret management. Those three commandlets give me everything that I need, because once you create a secret and it's in your vault, you're really just pulling it back when you need it. And so on the vault side, the commandlets are going to be different for every vault, because the module makers have some freedom on the commandlets that you use to configure the vault, but not how people recall information from the vault. And so for the secret store here, if you hit the right buttons, you get what you want. The secret store here has just 4 commandlets. Reset the vault, 5, excuse me. Reset the vault, get the configuration, set the configuration, set a password, and unlock. And so there's not a lot to do on the vaults. Once you install and configure it, it kind of just does its thing. And so I'll just give you a couple of little tidbits about the Secret Store module. I happened to do a demo last week for the PowerShell community call. And when I was prepping for that demo, I realized something that I never noticed before. And so the way that you create a vault is you create a vault, there's a config file, and the vault creates, in the example of the Secret Store, an encrypted file on your machine. And so if you want to get rid of that vault, there's in the secret management ones here, there's an unregister command, but there's no delete. And so when you unregister a vault, you're just taking it out of its connection. You're just taking away the connection from PowerShell. That encrypted file still sits on your machine. I was going to ask the PowerShell team to open an issue to see if there's a way we can delete those files. Because let's say you make a vault called Lars Personal Vault, and you screw it up and you want to do the reset command, or you unregister the vault because you're not using it anymore. And then 3 months later, you want to make another vault, and for whatever reason, you use the same name. It's going to say that vault exists because it never got rid of the original file. It just got rid of the connector to it. And so that's the one sort of thing that I don't love about the secret store module today, but that's a small little thing. And so setting these modules up is very easy. To set up a module, to set up a vault, this is the syntax here. And so some of this stuff is not even needed. Register secret vault is the name of the commandlet that we use to create a vault. We have to give it a name, and we have to tell it what module to use to create that vault. That's how it knows what language to speak. This default vault and allow clobber, they're not necessary. Default vault means if I have more than one vault, this is the vault that I want it to default to if I don't specify a name. Allow clobber is just to overwrite commandlets. And so before I do that, let me show you some stuff about a vault. So if I come in here, I can say get secret. Wow, that is weird seeing that. Secret vault. I can't type very well. And so these are the two vaults that I have registered on my machine. And so on the left is the friendly name that I called them. And on the right, in the middle, is the module that's tied to it. And so for the first one, Azure Key Vault, I named it AZ Key Vault because without seeing the module that's attached to it, it's kind of hard to know what the hell it is. So I just used the name of the vault itself. In Azure Key Vault, you can have multiple vaults. And so this is tied to one specific vault in Azure. MK Vault is my local vault on my machine. And so this says MK Vault is my default vault. Azure Key Vault is not. Now, I was expecting some errors here. And the reason that I didn't get errors is because I've logged into my laptop like 57 times today doing demos. And so I still have a token on my machine that's still active that I didn't get rid of. I've logged in inside of VS Code. I've logged in inside PowerShell. I've logged in the browser. And I honestly, without rebooting, I'm not sure how to kill off all those tokens. If you don't have a connection to Azure and you've registered an Azure Vault, it's going to fail because you can't access a vault in the cloud until you log into the cloud. And so I was hoping the error would come up here. Maybe it'll come up later, but you can register a connection to Azure, but you can't use it unless you log into Azure. And so if you boot up your machine for the first time of the day and you've pre-configured Azure on your machine, the Azure Key Vault, and you go to pull up your secrets, it's going to say, I can't read the Azure Key Vault secrets because you haven't authenticated to Azure yet. And so that's not always obvious. I mean, when we talk it through, it sounds, yeah, how would I get the secrets if I don't log in? But when you start up your machine and you go to pull your secrets, you're like, why did I get an error? I didn't log into Azure. And so sometimes in this demo, we may get a timeout here if my token ends. And so I have these two vaults. And so I want to just see the vault, the secrets that are in the vault. And to do that is just, oh, that's so annoying. Secret info. And so here's all the vault, here's all the secrets that I've installed in my vault. And as you can see, the lion's share that are in my local vault. I have one test secret here that's out in Azure Key Vault. And so these vaults are just names that I picked. I mean, excuse me, these secrets are just names that I picked to try to help me remember what the hell they are. This is the type of secret that it is, and this is the location where it's at. And so you can save different kinds of information into there. And so I'm going to show you, it's very simple. So if I wanted to recall one of these secrets, it's just get secret. I can't see what I'm typing. And so I'm going to use this one at the bottom, test secret. And so what came up? My vault timed out. It's asking me for my master password. So I'm going to log in with my master password. That's not going to happen. Thanks, Steven. Yeah, toggle. What was that?
Screencast.
Where is it?
It's screencast mode. It's your very top one, recently used.
Ah, thanks.
We can edit it and post.
Yeah. All right. And so here I just recalled the secret called test secret. That's this one over here. And so look what came back. A secure string. I can't actually see the secret right now. But this is the point I'm trying to make. And so we have to understand a little bit of the architecture, how this works. PowerShell can take a piece of text. I know the people at home might not see my hands. I'm doing some hand movements so people logo. You can save some text into a string. And then you can turn, that could be a secure string. That's just basically putting some loose encryption around it so that it's obfuscated. However, the tool that used to reverse that, to make that is easily reversible. And it's a built-in commandlet inside of PowerShell. Convert to secure string, convert from secure string. So in this case, I can take this password and I can reverse that so easily. A is equal to, let's do test credential. Test secret, sorry. Okay, and so now A has it's a string. It's a secure string. So if I want to reverse that, it's just convert from secure string, and I want it to be plain text. And so my super secure password there is 1234. And that's why I was saying you can't rely on secure strings, because they are reversible very easily within the built-in commandlets that PowerShell offers. So what's different about a secret vault? A secret vault takes that secure string, passes it into a vault, and when it's sitting on the machine, it's encrypted. When you recall it, PowerShell knows the commandlets to pull it back, unencrypt it, reverse the secure string, and pass it into the commandlets that you want to use. However, that's not being passed to the screen. So you can use these secrets and not have to expose your passwords if someone's looking over your shoulder or anything like that. All the communication between the commandlets and whatever the service you're talking to, that's all secure. And so we're not compromising ourselves in any way. But when we need to interact with the secrets, we need to unlock the vault. The vault will grab the secret, it will unencrypt the secret, and then do what I need to do with it. And so they actually have built it right into the vault. It's I don't even have to do what I did here. So this is the original command. It's built right in. I don't even have to do what I just did to convert secret. It's built into the vault. And so that's a string. That's just a string that I've stored in there. But probably most people aren't going to store that many strings. You probably need to store a credential. And so in PowerShell, that's called a credential object, right? And so the way that you put a secret in, I'll show you in a second. But a secret that's a credential object is just a secret with two parameters. And so if I went here and I said get secret test, I think it was test credential, right? This is why I use names, test, PS credential, right? And so if I pass that to get member, you see here it has a username and a password. So if I want to pull that up, let me grab that because I don't want to type it. I'll come back to that later. I went out of order here and I want to get myself back on track here. So let's see where we were. The commandlets, registering a vault. So let's actually register a new vault. And so I can have multiple vaults on a machine. I can have multiple vaults from multiple vault providers. So just because I have the secret store vault on my machine doesn't mean I can only have one iteration of it. I don't know why I would want to have more than one version of the secret store vault, but I could do that. And so where did that go? So as I said, register secret vault. You got to give the vault a name. You got to tell the module that you want it to read from. And we'll just, I'm not going to make it my default vault. So F. D. Okay, and so that was pretty exciting, wasn't it? Not at all. We just made a vault. However, the vault has no information in it yet. And so we have a vault now called Vault Demo 99. But if I want to interact with that vault, I need to put stuff into it. But one of the things that's going to say is, hey, by the way, you made a vault, but you didn't set a password on it yet. And so the first time I go to interact with the vault, it's going to say you don't have a master password set. So let's do that. So if I want to make a secret, it's pretty simple. Set secret. Well, what do I want to call the secret? Well, this is my RTP SUG demo secret. I don't know, making it up on the fly. And what am I going to put in there? What I'm going to put in there is called the secret. And this could be anything. I can do this, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'd be done. If I do that, I'm going to pick my vault name, vault demo. All right, and so now if I say get secret info, I say get secret info, and what happened there? That was new. Okay. Huh.
Is that your default vault?
Yeah, you know, I had this bug happen to me last week, and I got to talk to the PowerShell team. When you make a second vault of the same type, it duplicates all the secrets when it outputs them, but they're only in one vault. And so I don't really know what's going on there. But as I said, I don't know why you would want to have multiple vaults of the same type on your thing. You probably just use one vault. So I kind of just screwed myself. Now everything's going to be jacked up for the demo, but we'll live with it. And so I just made this secret. I can recall that secret. Get secret. RTP SUG as plain text. And there it is. I just recall the secret. If I want to do the credential, it's easy. And it's just a few more steps. And so before I do that, any questions from the audience? Anything that's not clear? Yeah.
I just have a basic question, and it might be, again, I'm not technical, but and you might have already covered this. Is there a certain amount of vaults that you would want to have? Because I know you said you could create as many as you like, right? But what would be, like, for example, if I am a professional like yourself, I could do things different to how you do things, and I could store more items in one vault as opposed to how you do it, or you know what I mean? Or is there like a specific amount of information that you could store?
Well, that's actually a really good question because it's something I didn't cover. So if we talk about the secret store vault for a second, I consider that a personal vault. And so I probably only want to have one, right? But you could have more, like I said. But the reason I consider it a personal vault is because the vault is stored inside your user profile in the app data roaming directory. I'll show you the path in a second. And so the only person that can access your vault is you, because you're the only one that has access to your profile on your machine, unless you're an admin or something like that. So essentially, when you make a vault with the secret store and you save it on your local machine, that vault is for you. Now, if you're working in the cloud, that's a different story because, like my company, I'll show you here real quick. My company, this is Azure Key Vaults, and we have about 40 vaults out there. And so these vaults are for different teams. And so the reason for that is that teams have shared secrets that they use, and they need to put them somewhere. And so people, we give them a vault, and they can securely put their information out in there. And so now you're setting access to a vault by a group. I may be accessing 3 or 4 different vaults because I work with 3 different teams. And so that's how you can have multiple vaults. But I would just say for most people, simpler is better. One vault is if that does what you need, just work with one vault. It's a lot easier. But for these Azure Key Vaults, you have to authenticate to each one of these vaults to get into them. So it gets a little bit more complex.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
What's the license type for using the Azure Key Vaults? Is that a P2?
Huh. I should know that, and I don't. I do not know that.
Okay, that's okay.
I will find out. License for Key Vaults. I can tell you,
Anybody can just create a key vault.
I think it's pretty basic.
Anybody can just create a key vault.
Yeah.
And store it.
And so
Yeah. Because it's not necessarily tied to your
it's in
tenant
the,
or your tenant level.
the vaults are in the tenant.
Right. It's
Right.
just a resource.
Yeah. And so,
Should we change the screen there, Mike?
sure. Probably a good idea. What was I going to say? I don't know about license type. I'll find out and I'll follow up with you. I think it's probably included with the basics. And I also will say that, you know, when we talk about using Azure, some things are expensive, like VMs and storage or whatever. Key vaults cost nothing. Like we have 40 or 50 vaults in my company's tenant. We have people accessing them all the time. And our charge is like $8 a month. It's nothing for key vaults. And so if you have access to them, it's great to use. There's a lot of services in Azure that cost next to nothing. It's just a few that cost the lion's share of the money. Key Vault is one of those services that you can get away using for next to nothing. All right, so I showed you how. Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? Yeah, sure.
So when you were showing your secrets, it was showing the type, right? So some of those were strings, some of those were other.
Yeah.
So okay, you have PS credential.
That's what I was going to show now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Never mind.
And so for me, most of the things that I use are not secrets in the sense of like a string of text. It's more of a credential object. It's a username and a password. And so putting that into a secret is not, at first glance, easy to figure out. It's easier than you think, but it's not. At first glance, you don't always recognize it. So if I want to set a secret that's a credential, what I'm doing here is I'm going to do the same exact thing. RDP sub PS credential. I don't know. Right? I'm just giving a name. I want to set a secret now. So I say, well, what am I putting in the secret? Well, now I just use PowerShell. I say get credential. And have you ever used get credential? Okay, so let me show you what that does, and then it'll make more sense outside of this. If I do get credential, it's going to prompt me for a username and prompt me for a password. If I would have saved that to a variable, I could have passed that. And so when you use secret management, you're just going to use the get credential commandlet to pull those two pieces of information in, and it's going to pass it into the secret and create two parameters. And so to do that is just set secret. Demo cred, no, just doesn't matter. I'll delete it anyway. Secret. And so you can help yourself out a little bit here. If you know the name of the user account you want to use, you can type that in ahead of time. So, you know, my lab would be mklab/ let's say I want to put in my admin account. And so that'll pre-populate for me. Or if I leave it out, it'll prompt me for a username. But if I do this, now it's going to ask me for the password for that account. And so you see here, it's all stars, right? I'm going to change this. Okay, and so now if I go get secret, and I apologize, I put that second, let me get rid of that second vault. Get secret vault. Unregister secret vault. Vault. Demo. Okay, I just did that so my view would be clean again. Get secret info. Okay, so now cred, where was that? Cred demo. So here it is. So it already knew it's a PS credential object. It just passed it in. I didn't have to set that, right? And so if I want to reverse that now, I can say get secret. What is it? Demo cred. Right? If I want to look what's in there, get member, there's a username and a password. So now I can say home. Password. Come on, catch up to me. Password. Password. And convert from secure string. Why is this not working?
You spell convert.
Yeah, thank you. Secure string as plain text. I'm putting in my master password. And so I made the password for that account password, right? And so it's all reversible, right? And so you can pass in multiple things to a secret. You can actually put more than one username and password in a secret through a hash table. I don't really see the need for that. I don't know that I would recall one secret and have 5 usernames in there and then say, oh, username not 1, username not 2, but that's a possibility. You also can put metadata information on these secrets. I do have a command for that. I don't feel like typing it, so I'm going to find that. Secret management, secret info. Okay, here we go. And so I think I made a secret here called test demo secret, and I just put the word metadata on the end. It doesn't actually mean anything. It's just what I called it. And so if I want to get the information from this here, function F8, and so you can see here, I put metadata on here. I made a field called info, and I just put a text in there and said, this is a garbage secret I made. And so you can add friendly information to your secrets if you want. I sometimes use that to, if I have a secret that I don't use that often and I don't remember what it's for, I might put a note for myself. But generally speaking, I don't use the metadata ever, because I just name my secrets with a name that makes sense and it's kind of easy to remember. And so interacting with secrets is as simple as get secret, set secret, registering a vault, register secret vault, get secret store, configure secret store, configuration. Okay, so if I want to see the configuration on my vault, scope, authentication, password, timeout, interaction. So interaction is prompt for me for information. Scope, just ignore it. There's 2 choices, current user and all users not supported. So there's really only current user. And so what that means is it's being stored in your user profile. It would be great if they supported all user, because then you could put a secret in a place other than your profile with a master password, and you can give the password to everybody on a team, and then that would do it, right? And you can have one vault on a machine like a server, and that would be secure. But you can't. So don't even think about that. You can do that if you took the password off, but they'd have to be able to get into your user profile. And so what they say with the all user thing is it's not supported. I think I tried and I couldn't do it, but I think I want to say that on a previous call, Stevie Valdinger said that he had tried it, or somebody, and so it might be possible. But essentially, vaults for Secret Store are saved in your user profile. All right, how are we doing here? It's getting long. Okay.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
Add some context to that. I believe, and I messed around with this a little bit a while ago, but it hadn't been recently. So pardon me if I get it wrong. The convert from secure string uses the DP API, and so as such, it's whenever you're creating secrets, it's tied to that user account on that machine. And that's kind of why the all users, even though you can put stuff in there, it's not going to do you any good, because only the user on the machine can then reverse that encryption.
And so this is why we invite smart people to our meetings, so they can answer the questions that I don't know. Thank you, sir. I can tell you what I do based on my general usage. My general usage is I have one vault on my local machine. I put a bunch of credentials in it. I change them every couple of months when my password expires. And the rest of the time, it's get secret all day long. And I pass it into a bunch of different things. That is 98% of what I do. And so much so that when I have to set my secret, I'm like, How do I do that again? You know, because it's 3 or 4 months. So truly, when you do this, this stuff is as basic as it seems, and it's not very exciting to talk about. And setting up the vault is the hardest part. Once you get the vault set up and you get the secrets put in there, recalling them and passing them around is pretty easy. The next hardest part is how to put on another vault for a third-party utility. And so I'm going to work with Azure Key Vault. I'm probably going to get it wrong because it is a pain in the butt to do, but there's a few steps you have to jump through, and I'll show you how to do that. But if we're going to talk about Azure Key Vault, we're ultimately going to end up getting into some concepts that don't necessarily have to directly deal with secret management that you have to know with Azure. And so the first thing is you got to authenticate to Azure. And so you have to have a way to connect programmatically from the command line. There's 2 ways to do that: interactive or service principal. And so those are 2 different options. When you get to Azure, you need to have rights to get to the Key Vault. Okay. And if you're making a Key Vault, you make a Key Vault. And after you make the Key Vault, you got to have access to the Key Vault. And so you have to give yourself permissions, or you have to give other people permissions, or you have to give your service principal permissions. And so there's a lot of things that can go wrong. It's not just register a vault. You got to be able to see the vault. You got to be able to access the vault and all that stuff. So we'll go through the Azure steps a little slower, and we'll try to put them all together. But after you register an Azure Vault or the local vault, they're just vaults with connections, and you pull the information from the same. So after we do the Azure stuff, what you saw today with the secret store, with get secret and set secret, it's exactly the same for Azure. Now, here's the interesting thing. And this is why I'm kind of glad I brought this up before. If I go get command module Azure Key Vault, anybody see get secret in here or set secret? I'll give you no. It's not there, okay? And so this is why I kind of brought up that point earlier with the demonstration of the 3 guys. Azure Key Vault is a module to talk to Azure, to Key Vaults in the Azure cloud without secret management. Someone who's like a JavaScript guy or a C++ guy or Python who wants to use Azure Key Vault to talk to their vaults in the cloud would use this module. Secret management knows how to talk to Azure Key Vault and knows which commands in the list to use to connect to a vault, to pull the secrets, to set the secrets. That's why I said you don't have to know this. However, you could create automation that reads vaults, and you would use these commandlets and not deal with secret management. We do that in my group. Those vaults that you saw out there, those vaults keep secrets, passwords, and certificates for our company. And one of the features of Key Vault is when you put in secrets and certificates, they have expiration dates. And so we have automation that reads the vaults every day, checks for expiration dates, and sends messages. Hey, your certificate's going to expire in 60 days. And so we have automation that uses this module to read from the Key Vault. We don't use secret management for that. That's completely different. But if I wanted to use Azure Key Vault with secret management talks to the module for me, and all these commands that you guys see on the screen right now are moot. You don't need to know any of them. All right, so let's talk about that for a second. And just so you guys know, I am way off the sheet of what I was going to do, so I have to look and figure out where the hell I was, because I had this all planned out, and like usual, I don't follow my plans. All right, so I mentioned 2 different ways to log in. I'm going to log in right now to Azure, and I'm going to use a service principal login because I don't want to deal with 2-factor, okay? And so I'm going to use the Connect AZ account. I'm going to specify a credential. Now, check this out. I want to connect to Azure to get to a Key Vault in Azure. That's ultimately what I want to do. But I have some secrets in my local vault that I can use. So I'm going to pass in a secret for my service principal from my local vault. I'm also going to pull from the secret a second time, from the vault a second time, and pull in my tenant ID. And so this is a way that you can use secret management for more than just a password, right? Now, Tenant ID, maybe some people don't think that's a big deal because it's public information. You could just type it in. You can save it as a variable. I put it in the vault just to have some fun. If I didn't put this service principal credential on here and I logged in with my credentials, I'd get the two-factor prompt, which is what everybody wants. You shouldn't be doing service principal logins for your everyday stuff because you're bypassing the controls that keep us safe. And so let's log in here. Okay, and so I'm connected. Woohoo, nothing exciting. And so now that I'm connected, get secret info. We have a secret here called MK Demo Admin. And just to show you here, if I go out to my vaults, I have this test vault here. If you've never seen Azure Key Vault, I'll give you a quickie little explanation. There's three sections, three pieces right here. That's where the things that I want to access go. Keys, secrets, and certificates. I'm making a certificate. And so here in the certificate, you can see here's my MK Demo Admin account. And so secret management is able to read from the Azure Key Vault. I can go into a secret. I can go to the secret. I can show the value here. And you can see I have a super secure password as my password. Okay. But I can do the same thing from the command line. I'm not even in the same prompt. So get secret info, get secret, what was that called? MK demo admin, save it as a variable. Okay, get member. That's just a string. Okay, that's fine. So that's even better. I can do this again. I don't need to save a variable. And as plain text. Right, and so I can go in. Most of the third-party vaults have this ability where there's some graphical interface, whether it be a web page or like in the KeyPass, it's an app you install on your machine, and then you can access the vaults through the GUI or through the command line, right? And so that's the nice part. Getting it set up, not always the nicest. So let's talk about that, and then we'll be wrapping it up here. How am I doing? Is everybody still with me? Are you bored out of your minds? This is still interesting? I can shut up anytime you want. Any questions? Anything not confusing? I got one thumbs up. At least someone's still awake. Awesome.
It's the first time I've seen Azure Key Vault. It's really cool.
At first glance, it looks very limited because when you create a secret in Key Vault, you can't create a username and a password. You're just doing one. And Secret Management does some extra stuff. So I don't particularly love Azure Key Vault, but it's a great resource for a team to use, right? And it just plugs into all the other stuff you do in Azure. Okay, so registering a secret vault for Azure requires a few more hoops. And so the first is you got to authenticate. And then the next thing is we're going to run that register secret vault command. We're going to specify the module. We're going to give it a vault name. But in this case, we have to give it some vault parameters. And so the requirements that we need here is the subscription ID of that I'm working in and the actual vault name in the Azure cloud. And so this one is called Z Test Vault 1. And so that's the name I'm putting in here. And so what I didn't talk about, which I'll talk about now real quick, is there's some assumptions that's made here, which Steve talked about earlier, which is access control. So these vaults live somewhere in the Azure cloud. They live in your tenant. They live in your subscription. They actually live in a resource group. And so a resource group can have more than one asset in it. That's why it's called a resource group. It's a group of resources, of which one of them could be a key vault. And so I have a resource group here. I have to give whoever's connecting to the vault access to the resource group. And then inside the resource group, I have to come down to the access policies and assign rights to the vault itself. I could put all my vaults in a separate resource group, and that would be probably a better idea. We didn't do that. And so we'll probably do a design change. And so there's multiple layers here. I got to authenticate to the cloud. I got to have access to the resource group. And I have to access to the vault. And in the vault has policies. And so I think I made one.
Well, what you were just speaking of was access to manage the vault itself. You haven't even gotten to secrets and certificates.
Right.
Those are separate.
He's right. Yeah. And so now I'm just going to show you what it looks like here if I create one. And so these are the 3 areas that we talked about: keys, secrets, and certificates. And for each one of these areas, there are permissions that I can set. And so, like, for example, what my team does is we manage vaults for other teams. Those teams don't really want us to know their secrets. So we're given access to read the secret information. This is a secret. This is when it expires. This is the owner. But I can't unencrypt it. I can't read it. And so you can get granular and you can mix it up a lot. None of this matters at all for secret management other than you need get to get a secret, create, update, delete. Those are the big ones, right? And so obviously across those. And so there's a couple other things involved. But so just remember, authenticate to the cloud, access to a resource group, access to a vault, vault permissions. That's all stuff that's required to make this work.
Mike, Dennis B had a question. Is there a log when reveal secret is hit?
Is there a log when I
for an auditing, I'm assuming you mean?
So you're asking, can I look to see when someone grabbed the secret?
Yeah.
That's a good question. So this is what I will say, but I don't know for sure. What we're doing is PowerShell, and all the PowerShell stuff is recorded. You're not going to have in the logs that this person grabbed this secret and the secret was XYZ, because that's not plain text information. It's not going to show. When I did the plain text stuff, that would be captured. But I am sure the logs would show this command was ran and this is what was accessed. But in a separate talk that I've done, there is a lot of logging that can be turned on in PowerShell that isn't on by default. And so you can turn the logging level up and probably capture all this, but I don't think it's captured by default. But I will say that I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if the context was for Azure Key Vault or for a local vault.
And I am sure in Azure Key Vault there is some log. But I don't think the logs are going to contain the secret info, just that they access the secret. And so let's take a quick look.
So Ryan Richter said there's Learn has some information about Azure Key Vault logging. So.
Oh, log analytics.
Yeah, it looks like he's answering in the chat.
Yeah. Look, when it comes to Azure, there's always a way. It just may not be the way that you want to go. But I am sure that information is there.
Thank you.
Okay, so registering a vault. Oh, any other questions? And thank you, Ryan, for chiming in with that. Yeah, and I actually didn't think of this till now. I'm not looking at the chat, so I don't know any. Is there any other questions I didn't answer?
No, we're doing good.
Good, I bored everybody to death. Perfect. Register secret vault with some parameters. And so when I do that, all that's going to do, secret vault, is just put another entry in here. And so let's do that real quick. Function F8. I'm going to use the name. See, I told you. That's the crappy part. Oh, hold on a sec. I don't have another vault. I already registered this vault, so now let me grab another one. And I can't grab any real vaults. And so this is a coworker of mine. I'm not going to reveal his stuff. I don't know what's in there. I'm just going to see if I can connect. I won't even have rights to it. I didn't plan that out very well. Let's make a vault. Great. I really don't want to share this stuff.
Well, just skip over it.
Yeah.
Okay.
promise me when I say you can register a vault. It's as simple as putting in the right parameters. Once you get the vault created, setting and getting is pretty easy. Since I'm not doing the register part, there's not too much else to cover. And so maybe we'll break here and see if they have any questions or something that didn't make sense. I can show you one other thing that I do fairly regularly, which, and again, this is nothing exciting. It's just another use case. And so enter PS session. I want to connect to and so I'm just
Somebody had a question?
And so what I just did is I authenticated to another server as a different user. So if you remember here, I'm logged in as Kanakos, and on this server I'm logged in as Kanakos admin. And I can say host name. It's going to match what's on the left there. And so I think that the logging in part is not that exciting because it's not that challenging. If you're logging in today, you know how to do it already. It's just how to recall a secret. And so the things that I do very often are authenticating to other machines, or authenticating the shares, authenticating the vaults, lots of Active Directory, lots of Azure Active Directory. And in all of them, they support a credential parameter. So it's just simply recalling a secret and passing it in. And if you get that concept, you can pass that to really anything that you use credentials for. And so with that, maybe we'll break here. Any questions from anybody? How are we doing at home? Good. All right, so if we don't have any more questions, maybe we can wrap this up here.
A lot of encouragement and thanks in the chat.
Sure, I'm glad people enjoyed it. I haven't presented this module in about a year, and so it was first time through in a while, and I was a little rough, but I think we got the point of it. And so what my just is, oh, that's me. I'm reading my own transcript. All right, so if you've been watching at home, thank you for watching this video with us. Our group meets twice a month. We'd love for you to come and join us in person. If you'd like to do that, you can visit us at rtpsug.com or find us on Meetup, the Research Triangle PowerShell user group. If you're watching this at home, that means you're probably on YouTube, and we'd love for you to check out our channel. We have about 125 other videos that you can watch. Anything related to PowerShell, our group is probably covered. And so we're going to say good night, and we hope we'll see you at the next time. Thank you.